All right, welcome to another edition of the Krug Show. Hope everybody's having a phenomenal day. And it is the Krug Show Niners Nation beginning. That's right. Today, for the first time, we are starting our weekly Niners Nation edition of the Krug Show. And today we've got Kyle Posey, the managing editor of Niners Nation. And he's with us to talk about Deebo and the Niners and all these great topics from the day. What's up, Kyle? How you doing, man?
Doing great, man. Thanks for having me on. Looking forward to it. I think we're going to have a lot of fun. Thursday in April, nothing going on. And sure enough, Deebo.
Oh, it's beautiful. Well, before we get into Deebo, tell me a little bit about yourself, because I know you got a football background, and tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah, man. So I played in high school like everybody else. I was a high school quarterback like everybody else. I was not good, and I'm not going to lie about my high school background like a lot of people on the internet do. Played some JUCO ball, went to a D1 AA school, which is FCS now in Houston, Texas Southern. Bounced around a little bit, but I learned a lot more just coaching football. So I went to high school in Iowa. So I coached for 4 years high school in Iowa City, and I moved to Phoenix about 4 years ago and been coaching the high school ranks here. So a lot of DB, wide receiver stuff. I would say that's my expertise, quote unquote, but I mean, nobody's an expert. We're all just guessing. We're all always learning and evolving. So that's pretty much my background. So a lot of coaching. And then with Niners Nation, man, it's given me a chance to just look at the best of the best. So going from coaching high school players one day to watching Nick Bosa come off the edge the next day is fun, but you get to learn a lot.
Well, we're going to be doing this weekly, and I'm super fired up. And tell us a little bit about Niners Nation. Now, I know all about Niners Nation. I probably go there, I don't know, check the browser probably 8 to 10 times a day, probably even more in the off season, to be honest, Kyle, because I'm always looking to see what's breaking on the 49ers, and news can come from a number of different directions, and you guys cover it well. Tell people, though, who maybe haven't stumbled onto Niners Nation about the site and what they were going to find if they go there.
Yeah, so I've been running Niners Nation going on 4 years now, and we have a nice staff, and I had an opportunity to kind of handpick these guys and gal. What I want to do is make it more about the human element, and I also don't want to be a pom-pom cheerleader site. So that's right. What I try to do to set us aside, because it's easy to, like today, they signed Marcus Johnson. It's easy to say, oh, he's going to go 1,000 yards, but let's be honest about it. He's probably going to be a special team guy. And if he makes the roster, that's great. If he contributes anything, even better. That's the type of analysis I want to talk about for Niners Nation. And we try to get in everything, whether it's what these guys do charity-wise off the field to X's and O's and everything in between. So trying to do a little bit of everything with Niners Nation, and the staff writers that I have, I do a really good job with that.
How many people comprise Niners Nation, start to finish? Everybody from the people that are writing and have the bylines to everybody. I mean, how many people are in this organization right now?
We're probably about 10 deep. So not too big, but enough that we're having, different ideas, because the last thing I want is for people to just only hear my ideas, for me to be the only one to get takes off. That's not what you want, man. You want to have everybody has different opinions. If I think something about Deebo, somebody else doesn't have to agree with me. And that's another big part of the reason why I want to get just, different ideas, different flows, different minds coming into the site.
Well, it sounds awesome. And we're fired up. And, my football background is that I played 1 year in high school and really, wound up falling in love with basketball, falling in love with, lacrosse, falling in love with maybe girls at that point, not falling in love with football. And then just kind of falling into a football career through my time at Sac State, and then with the Sacramento Gold Miners, and ultimately with the Arizona Cardinals. And then that kind of segued into radio for me. So that's kind of been my path. But I love the personnel side of things, and it's a passion of mine for sure. So I watch enormous kind of unhealthy amounts of college football during the year, and talking to a number of my friends who are scouts around the league weekly about, what they're seeing. So it's, I've blended the two careers, but now coming back and doing this YouTube show, it's really given me an opportunity to kind of dig deeper into what I really love, and I consider, capable of talking about, and that's the NFL, and most specifically the 49ers. So I am fired up to have you guys on here. And we had Akash on last week. He's phenomenal. Shout out some of the writers that you do have on your site, because Kyle, you got some really, really good people who are putting out some fantastic content.
Yeah, I'm proud of these folks. And that was the goal, just to amplify their voice, give them a lane. A lot of people haven't heard of them, and all it takes is just give them an opportunity, and they're making the most of it. So it's fun. My question to you is, how many draft prospects have you watched this week?
How many have I watched this year?
Yeah.
Where I would actually say I could have an opinion, I would say only about 200.
Still got about 400 to go, right?
Yeah, seriously, because I'm not a
NFL
pro
grind is
personnel.
nuts.
If I was a college personnel director, I'd probably know 1,000 guys. So that's why it's like, that's the other thing. When you get to this part of the year, if once you've had a job where you've rolled that film back and forth and you've gotten paid a check to study these guys, you know the difference between knowing and not knowing. And I always consider myself as somebody who's interested, and I know the players that I know, but I don't know all the players. So if the Niners may pick somebody that they think is phenomenal that just wasn't on my radar at any point this year. And then once I watch film and see what they look like and study them a little bit, then I can have an opinion. So I guarantee you that will happen, especially on day 3. They'll pick somebody that I'll be like, what? I really don't know much about that guy. So nobody knows everything unless you get paid the cheddar to get it done. But I'm more of an enthusiast at this point than a pro scout.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, man. I just started digging into some draft guys recently, and just like you said, the more you do it, I don't want to say the easier it becomes, but you just kind of want to keep watching to see, okay, who's next? Who's better than this guy? Okay, he's this way. I want to see a different skill set, and you just go down a crazy rabbit hole. The next thing you know, it's 12 o'clock at night.
Well, I probably, if I was working in the NFL, I would have been fired 5 times already, because I would have been the guy every year that was banging the table for a prospect. I had a buddy who was a Raider scout, and he told me that Al Davis in the middle of the draft turned to his scouts and he said to this one guy, "So what do you think about these 2 players?" And the scout looked at him and he said, he knew he didn't want to put his head on the chopping block, right? So he looked at Al and said, "Al, I want what you want."
Man, I couldn't do it. No shot.
That made me laugh. I want who you want. Let's get into the story of the day, Niner-wise, and that's Deebo Samuel. And everybody, I don't even know confidently, Kyle, that it's even a story. But the question of the day is, are the Niners going to consider trading Deebo Samuel? Here are the facts. He scrubbed his social media of 49er-related mentions. All right, those are the facts. That's really it. I expect him to get a contract extension for the 49ers to hand it to him to sign as he's walking out onto the field in July before training camp. That's when I expect that him to sign that deal. Same with Nick Bosa. I think they'll do something with Jimmy between now and then to create that room to give them that money to spend. But what do you make of the story of the day that he's, that maybe the negotiations between his agent and Parag have gotten a little icy? We know Parag's a hell of a negotiator, and the Niners will dig in deep. Do you think we are seeing a crack between the relationship between Deebo and the Niners, or is this nothing to see here, business as usual, don't bat an eye?
I think there's a lot going on with this, but I think the bottom line is there's nothing to see here. But at the same time, you have to think, 26-year-old receiver coming off a career year, coming off a year that we haven't seen in the NFL by any player. So naturally, he's going to want to get compensated for it. Why wouldn't you? There's no way you can blame him for that. Okay, with that said, the 49ers, they operate a certain way. They, generally speaking, under Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, they're going to extend their players right before training camp hits, more than likely. So I imagine after seeing Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, and now Stephon Diggs, like the best of the best wideouts get paid, Deebo wants to be paid just like them. And he probably walked into the 49ers room, got an offer, looked at the offer. Whoa, what's going on here? This is not what I'm worth. So now I don't want to call it a temper tantrum, but he's probably upset at the number. So he's going to say, okay, you don't value me like I feel like I should be valued. I'm going to get somebody's attention. And in today's day and age, when we talk about before recording, social media matters. So by doing that, he knows that people on the internet are going to notice. So of course, all we talk about is he going to be? Think about that, especially when you were talking about when you worked in the league. What would have happened if we're talking about because a player unfollowed his team on Instagram that he's going to get traded? Season's over. Hasn't played a game in a few months. but this is what it's come down to. It sounds silly to say out loud.
It's wild. It's a different time for sure, but he's a valuable player. You can argue he's the most dynamic player on the team. He's also, we were talking about it a little bit in the green room before we got rolling here. He's been hurt. He's been hurt a lot. And I saw the numbers. You guys had him today at Niners Nation. Was it 31 of 48 or something like that? He's played. He's missed a lot of time. And if you go back to South Carolina, he had soft tissue injuries there. I believe quad and hammy issues. His legs could get big. And I would say he's due, based on the market. I mean, I could be wrong. Tell me if I'm wrong, but about $70 million guaranteed. Now, how it's going to be structured, I don't know. But the other guys of his ilk are getting about $70 million guaranteed. Maybe the Niners came to him with an offer that was, the guaranteed money was closer to 40 or 50 million. And he's looking at these offers around the league going, no. I want to be paid, market rate. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes. Is this just a tough negotiation and, Parag's tough and they're going to have to battle? Or is these trade rumors legit? Now, John Lynch said it at the combine. He said the other day, hey, Deebo's a leader on the team and he's emerged as a leader. He's talking about Bosa and Deebo. And he's like, hey, they're leaders on the team. They lead in their own way. And they're going to get taken care of and that it's budgeted for. But, we don't know exactly what the demands are, and we don't know exactly what the offer is and how far apart the divide is between the two numbers, what they're offering and what he's asking for. So let me throw it to you this way. Is there any way you would Niner fans, when I even tweeted about this today, was people like, no, do not do that. Best player on the team, Lynch should be fired. I mean, this is not, this is not cutting the long snapper. This is the most dynamic. This is arguably the face of the team right now. And one of the great young players in the league and a legitimate MVP candidate this year. And yet do you think they'll trade him? I mean, if you're Lynch and the phone rings and teams are calling, are you answering those calls, or are you just saying, no, this is our guy? We don't even want to listen to what you're offering, or is he listening to those calls?
I feel like it would be bad business to not listen. Just think about what Tyreek went for. Think about, again, sell high. If you are in a position to receive multiple first-round picks for a player like Deebo Samuel, and again, you have to hit on those picks if you do flip him, and you have to maximize the cap space you create and continue to build around your rookie quarterback. Trey Lance, first-year starter. You don't want to trade away Deebo Samuel, but if you are going to, you're going to have to replace him, and you know that. So I would entertain the idea. It's going to have to be a deal where I'm like, I know I'm coming out ahead in this one. Like, I know 4 years from now, I will look smart. And that's not what the media thinks. It's not media perception, but there's no doubt about it that I would listen to it. You're not going to be able to get Deebo off the 49ers for, a couple day 2 picks. Like, that's not a situation that anybody would envision. But if we're talking about multiple first rounds, or a first round, a second round, and who knows, a couple other day 2 picks, day 3 picks, whatever it may be, then yeah, I am. I know it can probably seem like, because Deebo did have the season, that it's bad business move. But again, you have to think long term, and the more picks you have, the more players you have a chance to build your team up. So yeah, you have to. Would you? Do you think that's an overreaction to trade Deebo?
No, I don't. I mean, there's very, very few players that I would put on the would not consider trade list. It's too physical of a game. You need players. You need lots of players. So, and it's interesting too. Tyreek Hill got traded for 5 picks, but Tyreek Hill's not the same situation as Deebo. Tyreek Hill was on a team that had already paid Mahomes $40 million, was totally strapped on the cap, and they had to pay him. So it was like, his contract was up like today. They had to do something. They were under the gun. The Niners are not under the gun. They have Deebo on 1 more year on his rookie deal. Theoretically, they don't have to do anything right now. So it's not the same situation. Then when you factor in who was the loser in the Tyreek Hill sweepstakes, it was the Jets. And now Robert Saleh let's talk about the Jets for a second. Robert Saleh's in year 2. They got the quarterback last year. There's really no pressure on Saleh, but he wants his own guys, and he doesn't want to take too many chances with picks because he's smart, and he knows in New York you don't get forever. And the other guy there, Joe Douglas, is probably trying to save his job, to be totally honest. He invested in Mekhi Becton. Becton had a bum knee. Becton didn't play very much. And so I think there's a lot of people in New York have very little patience for Joe Douglas, even though I think Joe Douglas is pretty good. So now you got a GM who's under the gun. So if I'm John Lynch, I'm absolutely taking that call, despite how the fans may feel. The fans are going, no, don't trade Deebo. But I'm taking that call because Joe Douglas is desperate, and he's got 2 1s and 2 2s. And I want 3 out of those 4 picks. I want 2 1s and 1 of those 2s, and maybe a player, or maybe a pick next year. But they got 4 picks in the first 2 rounds. I want 3 of those picks if I'm handing you Deebo Samuel at this point in his career. But I would do it, Kyle, because here's why. Deebo's got, in my opinion, he's a terrific player, but he's also a very unique guy. We talked about this earlier this week. Grant Cohn and I talked about this. You're talking about paying him $70 million like a receiver, premier receiver, but he's also your a guy that you use as a short yardage runner. And think about that. That does not add up to a long career when you use your most dynamic wide receiver, big play threat, on 4th and 1, on 3rd and 1, as in short yardage. So I don't know that I want to, even though I love Deebo and he's got tremendous heart, and when his legs are in shape, I mean, there's like almost no receiver like him in the game. If somebody comes offer me a bunch of picks and there's 2 number 1s in there, I'm doing it. I'm pulling the trigger because I really believe, Kyle, that he's got maybe 2 years of what we saw this year in him at that level. And then I think the level comes down a little bit, and maybe that's too clinical of an evaluation, but that's how I see it. I see 2 more years like that, and 5 picks, or 2 number 1s and a big package of picks. That's worth more than 2 more years of Deebo, in my opinion. Give me your thoughts to my whole reasoning there.
Well, I think it's hard for fans to separate that. These 2 things can be independent. Deebo is a great player when he's on the 49ers. When he's on the field, there are not many players who are able to do the things he can do when the ball is in his hands. With that said, how much worse would the 49ers be if you made that deal where you're getting all those high picks and you're trading Deebo and you have that cap space? If we were to say
they're hit on those
total,
picks, I mean,
true, yeah, that is the pressure. But in this offense, it's a Kyle Shanahan offense. He's going to get you the ball. If they can have another speedy playmaker, again, he's probably not going to be at the level of Deebo, but what Deebo just did, how sustainable is that? Like, is that going to happen again? Have you said 2 more years of this? If they were to get another year that's 80% of what Deebo just did, they would be head over heels about that. Because, again, I don't think people understand just how special his 2021 season was. So, yeah, I'm just it comes back to, so do you remember the Patriots game in 2019? It was a blowout, and it was 30-6 or whatever. And Deebo comes up limping a little bit off of a carry. Like, those plays can happen anytime in meaningless games anyway. So the threat of him being able to miss time, like you can't ignore that. So I know that's just like a random obscure example, but that's what football is. Like, those are going to happen in the most random occurrences. So I think I lean with you there.
It's so tough. I mean, we both. I mean, and I understand the fans. The fans are like, man, that's our guy. It's like, no, I get it. But football's not for long. It's interesting. When Bowman and Willis were together, I thought, man, we're going to be watching this duo man the inside linebacker spots on this team for the next decade.
Yeah.
And it just didn't happen. So it's like, if Willis and Bowman can crash and burn because of physical issues, then it can happen to anybody at any point, and especially bulked up players like Deebo. The value would never be higher, though. Only question I would have is, I wonder if the Jets, if the Jets are offering a 2 and a 3 or something, no. But if they were offering some bounty of picks, including a couple number 1s, man, I think if you're the 49ers, that probably is the better route but man, you better convert. You better convert.
Imagine that backlash.
Picks. Oh,
if their wide receiver they take flames out, or even worse, the wide receiver they take is injury prone. So you move Deebo out of fear that this wide receiver unknown is going to give you, let's say, 75, 80%. And now he can't stay healthy. Ooh, John Lynch might have to go back to TV if that happens.
We could play a game here, a drinking game of how many 49er bust wide receivers could we name in the last 25 years. And, I mean, DeAndre Smelter, come on down. AJ Jenkins, come on down.
Dante Pettis, how you doing?
Dante Pettis, where you at? Arnez Battle, thanks for coming. I mean, they've invested. Derek Hamilton, everybody. Now, I mean, Rashawn Woods. I mean, we could go on and on and on and on. Jason Hill. I had high hopes for Jason Hill. He went to Sacred Heart in the city. I'm like, Jason Hill, SH City guy. No, nothing. They, so many receivers that they tried out. Bruce Ellington. Remember how Bruce Ellington was a 4th round pick. Yeah, I like that pick, actually. I thought I had great hope for Bruce Ellington. So it's just the message is picking players is an imperfect deal. When you settle on a great player, man, you hold on to them like it's gold. But then it's tough because, what if you pay him what if you give him $70 million and he, breaks down, has leg injuries? You're almost by definition kind of out of the mix right there. So it's a high risk deal either way. I almost feel like it's safer to trade him for picks.
Yeah, it would be very tough to get out of that contract if you were to extend him. So it seems like a catch-22 no matter what you do, but you can play devil's advocate for both sides, which makes it fun. And to be clear, Deebo has a right to react like this. I feel like people should know that the human element matters here. And I am team player. And if I am a player who thinks I am worthy of a certain, somebody said Jalen Hurd, that's a good one. If I'm a player and I feel like I'm worth an amount, especially after the season I had, pay me my money. And if you don't pay me my money, I'm going to react and get the attention of the fans who are probably going to be on my side and overreact naturally. So I love it from his side of things.
All right, man, we're off and running. I'm already loving this. You're phenomenal at chopping it up. All right, so I threw out the Deebo topic. What direction you want to take it? You throw one to me. It's a dealer's choice. We'll go back and forth here.
So draft month, let's keep it draft, man. So you've been digging into wide receivers, I imagine.
Absolutely.
They're gonna draft a wide receiver. When is the question? It's not about if, it's about when. More than likely going to be on day 3. You've seen the visit tracker. Is there a name that you've watched who has stood out to you? Who's a name that this guy is a Shanahan receiver? This is a guy who they could really use. Who you got?
I was on Niners Nation earlier today.
Plug.
Danny Gray. I was sorry to bust up on the mic there. Danny Gray from SMU. It's funny, at the beginning of the year, all the scouts knew stop in Dallas or, go to SMU and check out Roberson, the receiver. And then Danny Gray kind of outshined him this year, and he's an electric receiver. And I'm just reading on Niners Nation that the Niners looked at him, and he ran 4.33. This guy, I mean, he's not Tyreek Hill, but he's got that kind of speed. I mean, he's in that level. He's one of those, oh my goodness, as soon as he's 2 steps by you, don't even bother. It's like sometimes you'll see a corner kind of give up on a play. Why did he give up on that play? Because that guy's so much faster, and he just burned right by, and there was no chance he was catching him. Danny Gray's got that kind of speed. So I was really excited when I saw that today, because Danny Gray, the Niners don't need a receiver. They have a bunch of receivers. They need a vertical threat who scares defensive coordinators. So, and does he have to be a refined route runner? No. Can he run a partial tree, as they say? Sure. Can he be more of a return guy? I don't care. What they really need is they need that scary 2-step vertical speed, and it can't be just a midget either. It can't be one of these 5'7" guys. It's got to be a decent sized target with electric speed. And that's what Danny Gray is. So I love the fact that, and I think he'll probably be on the board. I mean, he ran so well, and other teams are looking for the same kinds of things. So he may be there end of the 3rd round. I was hoping more like a 5th round or 4th round, but you're probably going to have to get him late 3rd if you want to make sure you get him. But that's that's one guy. The other guy who is a bigger receiver who, this is a great receiver draft. This is third year in a row, by the way. We've just had a dominating, incredibly deep receiver draft. But two guys to look for. Derek Young, who plays for Lenore Ryan in the state of North Carolina. Lenore Ryan gets some good players, and Derek Young is just yoked. I mean, this guy's 220. He runs well. He's raw, but I mean, if the Niners took this guy on day 3, you'd be like in camp, like day 1, who's Derek Young? You know what I mean? He'll be that. He's that physical. This guy's got ridiculous muscle tone, unbelievable explosiveness, really raw player, but really physical and likes to block and likes to hit. So I like him. And then Tanner Connor from Idaho State, 6'3", 235, had a workout the other day, ran the 4.3s. That's an intriguing guy. I mean, I think he'll probably be there in the 3rd or 4th round. But yeah, Danny Gray would be my favorite. There's other guys. I mean, Dotson from Penn State's a stud, and he's got great ball skills, great slot receiver. And there's a few more, obviously. But Danny Gray from SMU would be the receiver that I think that's the guy I'd be looking for, maybe at the end of day 2.
So if you want Gray, you're probably going to have to get him in that comp pick range, which is that 105, or probably maybe even a few picks higher than that.
Probably.
I'm glad you brought him up because the 49ers did visit with him. And it's nice when you watch players and you can see how they would fit. So when Gray was at SMU, like they're running screens, curls, deep routes, like just simple verticals, slants, and crossing routes. That's exactly what the 49ers do. As I said, like Kyle Shanahan's going to get you in space and get you open. It's up to you to do it, to create on your own with the ball in your hands. And I feel like that's where he would be a bit of an upgrade from Trent Sherfield last year, who, was brought in to be a special teamer, had a great training camp, but after that kind of fizzled out and we didn't really hear much from him. You mentioned his speed. So Gray ran a 4.33. He was a state track 100-meter champion. And that is in the state of Texas. And for those of you who are unaware, they do not run like the rest of us in the state of Texas. Like, he can flat out fly. And yeah, I think there are issues. Like he does a lot of body catching, and I feel like we should point that out. He has some drops, but he's competitive and he can block, which Shanahan loves. Like a guy who's willing to go in the box and clear out a linebacker or a safety. That's going to matter a lot. So I think Gray would be a great fit, and I imagine he'd have a little bit of return value as well, which as they've invested in this offseason, that they could stand to get a lot better on the special teams level. What is there a chance we see them maybe double down at receiver, because they're just throwing a bunch of names out there? And I think what I talked about a little bit earlier today was we're starting to shift away from the Mohamed Sanu's and maybe even Juwan Jennings types. Maybe it's due to the offense. Maybe it's just due to the quarterback or the spacing on offense. But to these shifty Ray McLeod, maybe Danny Gray types. And as I said, they signed Marcus Johnson today, who's another 4.3 guy. So a lot of speed yak guys seems like the next step.
Well, when the Niners were in the Super Bowl 2 years ago, or in 19 against the Chiefs, I forget who ranked them, but there was those on the Super Bowl teams. They always give you a million stats. One of the stats I saw that week was that the Niners and the Chiefs were the 2 fastest teams in the NFL. Speed kills, man, and and believe me, it's no accident that the 2 fastest teams wind up in the bowl. It's a game of speed. There's a reason people care about those 40 times, because the speed matters. Now, I'm not saying the 40 matters, but I am saying that you're just being functionally fast in football means a ton. It's a game of geometry, especially on the perimeter. I mean, if you have that kind of speed, like if you said, what do the Niners need this year? I would have said, well, they need Tyreek Hill. They need somebody like that, right? I mean, they need an explosive guy who can stay healthy and make huge plays, and open up the field underneath for their awesome underneath guys when they've got 3 of them. That's what they need. So, it'll be interesting to see, about the thing about receivers is that sometimes it's a different, especially these small school guys, it's a different level getting to the NFL. And a lot of times if you take rookie receivers, the one thing is they're usually not good on special teams. They don't help you a lot usually. And they're raw and can't play from scrimmage and need a year of development. So it's a tough thing to invest multiple picks in receivers, because odds show that outside of Randy Moss, most rookie receivers aren't that good and can't even get on the field. So it's tough. You have to find guys that, you got to pick your spots, I guess, at receiver. And they already have pretty good numbers at receiver. What they really need is they need a couple dynamic guys, potential dynamic starters. That's what I'd be looking for.
What did you think about Brandon Ayuk coming out? And are you disappointed in what he's done during his 49 tenure? Because I liked him a lot. So he's in my backyard, Arizona State. So I got a chance to watch him quite a bit. And he plays a lot faster than he times. And he's a very good athlete. But something's missing. And something hasn't clicked yet. And we saw him come on a little bit during the season. He's shown plenty of flashes. He's had 100-yard games last year. He flirted with some 100-yard games this year. But for whatever reason, it hasn't come all together. And I don't know if we're going to see that with maybe a different quarterback, but he does have to take the next step because he's first-round pick. And there was a lot of good first-round wide receivers in that class as well. So he has a lot to live up to.
Yeah, no, I'm a huge Ayuk fan. I first saw him as a sophomore, and I thought, wow, look at this guy. And I was hoping he was in the draft that year. And then you had to wait around a little bit, but really, really long arms, and really physically strong. I mean, you think about it, nobody's really detonated him and had him just lay there. He pretty much bounces off of almost every major hit. Very long arms, so even though he's like 6'1" and change, he plays like a 6'3" guy. But there's maturity issues there, I would imagine. I mean, and when I say that, I'm not even talking about his personality, Kyle. I'm talking about just as he goes about his business as a professional. I mean, I noticed it even in the playoff game. I think Jimmy at one point, he didn't have to call a timeout, but he was lined up in the playoff game in a key down on the wrong side of the formation. And Jimmy had to be like, direct him back to the right side of the formation. Sometimes those things don't matter. Sometimes it will, that you just blew up the play. And I think in that situation, it probably did matter. So that's attention to detail. So that's getting in, that's doing the reps in your, I was going to say playbook, but in your iPad probably. There's some rawness to his game. I don't know what kind of, I wouldn't try to even speak to the chemistry he has with Trey versus the chemistry he had with Jimmy. I won't even speculate. I've heard all the same stories that you have that, maybe he trained all off season with Trey and maybe he didn't have a great relationship with Jimmy. And I don't know how much of that's true or not true. I guess that could have a huge bearing on how the season went. But ultimately, he's got to be a little bit more accountable and a little bit more prepared. But I love his talent and I love his ability and I love his upside. And I think he's a good kid, Rockland kid, works hard, puts in the reps physically. So, as I said, it's a developmental position, where guys don't hit the league. They're not ready to roll. And so it takes a while, but I love his future. And I got nothing but positive thoughts about him. If anything, the one thing that bugs me is that in the process of teaching him a lesson, I'm not for teaching guys lessons. It's like teach them lessons in the preseason. Right. Don't teach them lessons in the regular season. You got 52 other guys on the roster that are looking to win games and go to the Super Bowl now. No lessons, no more lessons. Get your lessons done in July. And sometimes players don't respond, and sometimes they need to be. The only thing a coach can do to impact a player is take away his reps and take away his time. The other thing I think, Kyle, and I don't know that I'm right on this. This is more of just me a guessing, but I always look at things from a personnel side of things and look at the Niner receiving core last year. Ayuk was the only guy who was even suitable to run off the coverage and be that go threat because Benjamin was hurt early on. So I just feel like, when you're in that spot, you got a quarterback that doesn't throw the deep ball well, and you got all these great underneath routes, you become kind of like this decoy, and you can see yourself doing all the running and getting none of the benefit. Do you see what I'm saying? You're constantly running 40 yards at full speed, and it's getting dumped off to the back or to Kittle or to Deebo. And I don't think that he's quite that receiver. I think they use him that way out of necessity. And that's why it's so vital they get Danny Gray or somebody like him this year.
So you mentioned just him being mature. I don't know if you remember this or if you've seen the clip, but week 18, Emmanuel Mosley gets an interception. Ayuk runs onto the field as Mosley is returning the interception out of just jubilation. Like, he's hyped. We just made a play. The coaches are trying to pull him back. He doesn't have his helmet on, so he's just all over the place in that regard. But he's a kid, man, and I just talking about the type of wide receiver he is. I think he was like one of the only wide receivers who could win one-on-one on the perimeter that they have, and I think that showed up a lot, especially on third downs. They should have been a lot better on offense consistently, and a lot of that had to do with like, they didn't know how to get Ayuk the ball. To me, just run him on slants, digs, like second-level routes, and he's going to get open because he has a friend. We saw a little bit of it as the season went on, but again, it was never consistent. But it does fall on the coach to get him the ball, and it also falls on the player to be prepared. Maybe in practice he wasn't locked in. There are so many parts that we just don't know when you talk about the personnel side. If Shanahan sees a guy running the wrong route consistently, or as you mentioned, he's not lined up in the right spot, how can you trust him to call his number? So, yeah, I totally get it, man. But I think it's an interesting topic just because there's so much conjecture, there's so much guessing when it comes to Ayuk. And if he's the same guy next year with Trey Lance, what are the excuses? Like, what can you say now? Because there's nothing.
Yeah, no, I think he's going to be much better going forward. It's interesting too with Deebo and these, some of the injuries that potentially could come as his legs kind of get thicker as he takes more running back carries. And then Ayuk, who I think the arrow's pointing up, but it's not pointing straight up. It's more of a gradual incline. I think 3 years from now, I would not be shocked if Ayuk were the better player. Let's hit a couple of topics. We're already 35 minutes into this, and we don't want to take too much of your night. But let's go speed round on some of these things that I want to get to. The Rutgers D-end, Kamoko Toure from the Colts, was at the facility yesterday. Edge guy, twitchy, played only a couple years of high school. Really kind of busted out at the Senior Bowl practices. The year he came out of Rutgers, and is coming off of his career year. 26-year-old free agent. They didn't. I don't think they signed him yet. What do you think of the idea of Toure being added to the mix?
The idea of him is that he would be a great fit. I don't know if you remember studying him coming out. It was only 2018, so it wasn't that long ago. But he was a second-round pick out of Rutgers, and he was that high. He went that high for a reason because he can rush the passer, especially in a wide nine like the 49ers or Chris Kosir do. And you can only imagine, as we've seen other edge rushers, they have career years. The problem with Toure is that he was always banged up, and that was an issue back at Rutgers. I believe he had a couple of season-ending knee surgeries, and that's been the case in the pros too. So you kind of just hope that if you do sign him, you are able to lessen his reps and keep him healthy by that way. But as far as the fit goes, it would be great. He had a higher pressure percentage last year than both Arden Key and Samson Ebukam. Obviously, they let Arden Key walk, so they need that other dynamic edge rusher. And Toure in college and a little bit with the Colts, he was able to have he was able to move inside, and that's where they really got it with Arden Key. They're able to have multiple rushers, and some of those edge rushers move inside over a guard and just whip neon-athletic guards. So in theory, Toure would work. I would be worried that he wouldn't be able to hold up all game. Have you had a chance to watch him at all?
I haven't seen him that much with the Colts. I did study him coming out of Rutgers, and I really liked him, except, he's one of these guys that, at least at Rutgers, he was just totally fodder against the run. I mean, you could easily kick him out and just run right at him. He's gotten better at that with the Colts. He's still not a great run defender, but as you stated, in the wide nine, it's all about getting up the field and having that twitch and getting up the field and wreaking havoc and kind of forcing the quarterback off of his spot. And I think he can do that. And, usually you pay big dollars for guys with this kind of twitch, but his inconsistency against the run will bring his price tag down and maybe put him into an area where he might be exactly what they're looking for to kind of complement. They lost Arden Key. They're looking for another edge rusher. They like to come at you in waves. I like it. I mean, to me, I'd sign him, but I got to know what the contract looks like. What is the priority? We're 3 weeks away from the draft. 3 weeks from tonight is the draft. What's the priority position-wise right now going into it for the Niners?
So depending on how you feel about Ebukam, they need to find a guy who can complement Nick Bosa. So Eric Armstead was an all-pro from the Bears game on last season. When he kicked inside, he was one of the 3 best defensive tackles in the NFL. People need to understand and recognize how great he played. Okay, with that said, you still have to have somebody on the outside. And that's, you don't have to, but we've seen the 49ers. We know how they're going to build. John Lynch is going to build through the trenches. With that in mind, get somebody who can move inside. And that's where a Teray guy would come into mind, where you can win on the outside and the inside. And that way they can have 3 edge rushers on the field at one time with a guy like Armstead. I think edge rushers up there, but I think people are forgetting about safety. And the last thing you remember is what you're going to think about. So Jaquaski Tart dropped an interception. Everybody thinks he sucks. It could not be further
Right.
from the case.
Right.
He did so much for this defense. He was the glue guy. You could, whether it's fitting the run, whether it's blitzing, whether it's playing, the little robber roll over the middle where he's eliminating all crossing routes. Sometimes he played the deep post, take away the deep routes. So when him and Jimmy Ward were on the field, they didn't give up anything deep. Like, they were really tough to pass against. And what they do need to do is find a safety in the draft who can just kind of come in and do a lot of the same things, kind of a utility guy, but also as a playmaker. And he does have to have ball skills, and he does have to be aggressive, and he does have to have that type of recklessness you need at safety. So those would be the top 2 for me. I imagine they have higher hopes. The 49ers have higher hopes for both Aaron Banks and whether it's Jalen Moore. So I don't think that, guard is as much of a priority as some think. But a center of the future, Alex Mack, 37, has probably one more year left. Maybe even a right tackle, Mike McGlinchey. They picked up his 5th-year option. Who knows if he's going to come back healthy? Like, that's a lot of projection in that sense. So edge rusher, safety, and then start to fill out some of those depth roles, and of course wide receiver, as we talked about earlier. Do you think, or I guess what do you think about that? Is how would you rank the needs?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's really hard to say, because to me, in some of the mocks that I've done in the simulator, Kenneth Walker III keeps staring me in the face, and I can't pass on him. I'm not.
Good luck having Shanahan pass on him after the season he had.
I mean, my goodness, that guy's awesome, and I loved him at Wake. And then he goes to Michigan State, and he's even better. And then I just watched the draft featured show, which is really cool. ESPN does, and they kind of do, and you get a feel for the guy. And ultimately, as a scout, what you're looking for is the essence of a player, right? What's his essence? I see an awesome special player there. So I love Elijah Mitchell, and I'm even a Trey Sermon fan, and I like Jeff Wilson's toughness, and I think JaMychal Hasty's a pretty interesting little back with some fight. I like their backs, but none of those guys are the kid from Michigan State. So if Kenneth Walker III is there, I might just say, you know what? I had this plan and that plan and this plan. I'm going to get rid of that. I'm going to go with Kenneth Walker III.
Best player available.
So, yeah, I mean, and a dynamic runner in an offense where running the ball is just the key to everything Kyle does. It's like you can never have too many runners, and they had deep running backs in camp last year. They went through the entire room basically by the end of the year. So you can never have enough guys. And if you're facing a dominating runner, I mean, think about that. I mean, that you want to help Trey Lance be great. Give him a dominating runner. Give him a Pro Bowl running back that he can hand it to. Imagine if you only had to use Elijah Mitchell or Trey Sermon in a role. This team did lose Raheem Mostert, and Mostert created a level of dynamic, big playability that Elijah Mitchell's 4.33 on the workout, but he doesn't play to that speed, really. He's got other strengths that are important. Didn't fumble all year. He's a great kid. He can pick and slide, find the hole. He's a phenomenal short yardage back. But as far as that, they lost a lot of speed with losing Mostert. And I like that dynamic running back. And so if the dynamic running back is there, man, and this is a great draft for runners, but I'd have a hard time passing. Otherwise, I would say that I think a safety who can cover, who will allow Jimmy Ward to play up on the line. I think that would be a need. I love Nick Cross from Maryland because he runs 4.3. He'll still hit you. He's got good size. He's played at a good level. He really, like, you see that 4.33 speed. He diagnoses quickly pre-snap, and he is flying, covering a ton of ground. And if you're the Niners and you're going to play a lot of cover 3 or even split safety, you want a safety who can cover the field and against speed. And a guy like Cross, I think, would allow Ward to play up on the line. So if those are the two guys I'd be looking for: an elite running back to fall, and if Nick Cross is still on the board, that might be a little high for safety, and I would trade back a few spots if I really wanted. If I was going to center on Cross for sure, I'd probably trade from 61 down into the 70s, but I might just take him at 61 because I think he's that good.
I would actually, and this goes against compiling picks, and the more picks you have, the better chance you have to make your roster. I would trade up if Lewis Seen from Georgia started to fall.
That's the other safety. I love him, the Georgia kid.
If he were to get into like 10, 15 picks of me, I'm picking up whoever and getting him because I think there's a good chance that he ends up as an all-pro. And I'm very serious when I say that.
No, I agree.
You watch him, there's nothing that he does wrong. He might miss a tackle, but he still has the right leverage and he funnels it to the correct people. He blitzes at his size up the middle
and gets home.
Yes, and will pressure the quarterback. When you talk about running 4.33 like Elijah Mitchell did, he ran that fast, but he plays even faster because he's able to diagnose and just the way that he clicks and closes, and he can cover. Man, he plenty of times. When Kirby Smart uses you the way that they use Sign, you can tell that he's a special player. He reminds me a lot of Jordan Poyer from the Bills, and which is
even a better athlete.
Yeah, which is crazy because he is an all-pro. But imagine if Poyer ran a 4.3, and because he has the instincts, he diagnoses everything. A great tackler, great coverage player, and he just seems like he's only going to get better. I was able to talk to Nakobe Dean, their linebacker, a little bit about him. And
love him too. I mean, he's on the board. I'm taking him, by the way.
Right.
I amend what I said before. If Nakobe Dean is there at 61, John Lynch, take Nakobe Dean. That's how good that guy is.
Seen's probably one of my favorite players in the draft, and I think there's a good chance he ends up as a top 15 player if we were to do a redraft a year from now.
Georgia, man. Wow. All I got to say is I don't have a hat on right now, but I tip my cap to Georgia's recruiting coordinator.
Jeez.
I mean, my goodness.
He's the head coach at Oregon now. That's what happened.
Yeah. I mean, awesome. I mean, they have an awesome array of talent. Couple last thoughts. Jim, I don't want to take forever on this. I want to do it quick. I am saying that, but it's who knows. Jimmy Garoppolo's next team is.
Ooh. Man. His
team this year is.
Right. His suitors, they evaporated. They dried up, man. They're nowhere to be found. Everyone, like Carolina, is the only team that would make sense, but the Kenny Pickett connection is very strong. I just think if I'm Carolina, am I going to tie my last leg after I've butchered every quarterback decision to a quarterback who's not going to get any better, to a quarterback who's essentially a dead man walking? I wouldn't do it, man. I don't know. Texans, but they're going to build around Davis Mills. So every team that you would point out doesn't really make a ton of sense.
Let me throw two at you. Tell me what you think.
I would
New York Giants. New York Giants?
We're on the same page. Yeah, Giants would be my answer.
Would you want Daniel Jones coming back?
Absolutely not. Jimmy Garoppolo is better than Daniel Jones. And Jimmy has his faults, but he plays on time. And Jones is a disaster.
He is. He's a turnover. I don't think I've seen a young quarterback who turns it over like Jones. But I'll say this about Jones.
He did it in college.
He's got the stature, and he's fast as hell.
They need to run him fast.
He'd be intrigued. He's a terrible quarterback, but he's raw at least. I don't know. I mean, you're talking about a backup quarterback to Trey Lance. Right. The only other team that I saw that may make sense to me. What are the Browns going to do if Deshaun gets suspended for the year and Baker's pouting? Is there a way that there could be a three-way that sends Baker somewhere and Jimmy to the Browns and some combination of picks to the Niners? Because I could see that. I definitely think Deshaun gets suspended, and I definitely think Baker is too immature to really, take over that position and man that role. But Jimmy could walk in there and do exactly what they want him to do. What do you get, the Browns?
Suspended for 10, 12 games, let's say. The Browns
it's the whole season, and that could be the season.
Yeah. Baker, as you said, rich, spoiled kid, brat, doesn't want to play that role, knowing that he's on his way out.
It's lost face in that room.
Yeah. Baker goes to Seattle. Seattle sends them DK Metcalf, and that's part of the trade. And in turn, Jimmy gets shipped for whether it's picks, whether it's a player that's on a an expiring deal, we could say. Jimmy goes to Cleveland, and it's going to be for a year because that's what his contract is. He probably will have to rework his contract, but he gets to play for a playoff team that's loaded with a great running game. So that would be an area that you're doing Jimmy right, and he gets to play right away for a playoff team. So that would make sense. And they would be in a much better situation than the Giants too. So.
There was an interesting article, and I think I want to get the name right. Is Javi Guerra who writes for you guys? He wrote about a receiver, Kyle, named Samori Toure, who played at Montana, then finished up at Nebraska, and I guess Leonard Hankerson met with him on Monday. This kid had a 12-catch, 300-yard day against Southeast Louisiana. 4.4 speed. The number that caught my attention was the 6.77. That's the 3-cone drill. That's a great number. That 6.77 in the 3-cone.
Change direction.
Yeah, but I'm just giving the audience just an idea of I'm moving off the Jimmy thing. Otherwise, me and you, we'll dig into the Jimmy thing. We'll go down that rabbit hole forever.
Oh yeah.
But just another thing on Niners Nation, that's an interesting article. Like, I didn't know anything about this guy, Samori Toure, and I definitely will check him out tonight on YouTube and just kind of see his highlights. But that's kind of some of the stuff that appears on Niners Nation. You guys dig pretty deep.
Yeah, it's fun. So once we get the word that, the 49ers are going to visit with somebody, we're going to go deep in that. We're going to go deep on that prospect. So he seems like a guy who, 6'1", 191, he ran a lot of deep routes for Nebraska. So I had a stat that 55% of his routes were deep routes. So whether it's, 9 routes down the field, post, whatever it may be. And he's also a guy, though, that can be the bigger slot receiver. So that's kind of interesting to know that whether they're going to run those play action deep routes, and maybe Shanahan feels good enough about his blocking to leave him in the slot, but also a guy who can actually take the top off the defense. Does a good job of changing his tempo, and he is fast. You mentioned it. So he ran a 4.48, but I think with his tempo and acceleration, he plays faster than that. And the issue with guys, just because you're fast doesn't mean you're going to be a good vertical receiver. He can actually track the ball well as well. So you might have to worry about his releases a bit. But again, you can put him in the slot, get him off the line of scrimmage, and there you go. Problem solved.
Last one I want to finish with. We're 52 minutes in, so we'll go an hour even, let's just say. But this is kind of interesting to me. The list, you guys put out a list. I don't know if it was today. It might have been last week, actually. A list of the players, just basically the known associations. These are the guys that the 49ers have actually talked to. And then, I looked at the list last year, and they wound up drafting, I think it was 2 or 3 of the guys that they talked to. So it's not like this list doesn't matter. And it's not like these guys have an endless amount of time to just talk to a bunch of people, all this misdirection plays. I know people think, oh, it's the lying season and you don't really talk to the players you love. And I know, believe me, I know. But it is interesting looking at the list of guys that they have talked to. And I'm going to throw some of the names of the guys that they've talked to and just give me a quick thought on any of them. Boye Mafe from Minnesota, the edge rusher, is somebody that they've talked to. That guy is interesting to me. I think he ran in the 4.5s.
He did. So edge rusher, it just has raw athleticism. And what they really love is somebody who's violent with their hands. And that's what Mafe is. A guy also, 261, he can play inside and outside. And the issues that he has from high pad level to just, being efficient with his hands or having a plan, you have Chris. That's what you pay your defensive line coach to do, is to teach these raw athletes. So you get them in the building. A guy like Mafe, he would be able to help them right away. That's the type of edge rusher they're looking for. So would be a big fan if he were to land a 61.
Yeah, that's the guy. That's the guy who, offensive tackles are like, oh man, because Mafe's raw, but he hasn't even really learned moves. But he's so fast off the edge that he can just beat you with speed. He's a straight speed rusher, kind of like a young Leonard Floyd coming out of Georgia. He didn't have tons of moves. Now look at Leonard Floyd. He can knife back inside. He's one of the more refined guys compared to what he was coming into the league. So Mafe would be interesting. He can get the edge. And if you're Coach Herrick, you're like, hey, man, I don't, that's the wide 9. Just get up the field, baby.
Right.
How about
Thomas? Great compliment to Bosa, too, by the way.
Yeah. How about Thomas Booker from Stanford? Niners, I don't know. Lynch might have Stanford fright at this point because of Solomon Thomas. But Booker's interesting. He's 3'10". His workout numbers were great. He was one of Stanford's better players this year. He doesn't anchor versus the run. But you know what? It's a passing league anyway. And it's all about getting up the field and closing to the quarterback. I kind of like him as an interior rusher in a rotation, especially if you can get him in the 6th round. I think he might be there. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he'll go in the 4th or 5th because of the workout measurables. But Thomas Booker was the best player on Stanford's team this year. It was a really bad team. They were terrible against the run.
Is that really a compliment to call him the best player on Stanford?
Well, they couldn't stop the run, and that always concerns me. Hey, we just drafted a defensive tackle. Great. How was he against the run this year? Well, they were, everybody and their brother ran for 7 yards a pop. Utah ran for like 10 yards a carry or something. It was embarrassing actually. But Booker is intriguing, and as a day 3 athlete, I'd be interested. They talk to him.
Yeah, and the only issue, as you mentioned, with the run defense is you should be able to, with Hassan Ridgeway, with the assumption that Javon Kinlaw does come back, you would think you would be able to develop him like a Kevin Gibbons role where he's only playing in sub packages, or he's only playing on obvious passing downs where, hey, as you learn, just use your raw athleticism, win the snap, push the pocket. So if that's the goal, if that's what they want to do, then yeah, that would be a good sign, a good pick, especially day 3.
Leon O'Neal, the safety from A&M, they talked to him at the combine, and I think it was somebody caught it on video. I saw it on social media, and man, he lit up like a Christmas tree as soon as the Niners were brought up as a topic. Clearly, they made an impression in the meeting in Indy, but I always liked Leon O'Neal. He was around the ball an awful lot for A&M.
So I didn't like him that much when I watched him. He's physical. You can use him in a bunch of different roles, and you could see when they're playing, when guys are pointing out, communication skills are a big deal. So that was a big part of it. But I just felt like he didn't play fast. He was stiff. And whenever it came to him one-on-one in the open field, it did not look pretty. And it was not against the best of the best. So when I say that, I mean like the running backs, like the Kentuckys, and not, Alabama or whatever. So because he did play in the SEC, by the way. But still, that was lacking enough for me where I would just go another direction if I'm going safety route for.
Yeah, I mean, he's not a candidate to play free. I think he's a line of scrimmage box safety.
Yeah, he doesn't do big jumps or have the range to do that.
Yeah. How about Myjai Sanders from the edge rusher for Cincinnati? Man, Cincinnati had a really good defense this year, and obviously the corner Gardner is I think one of my favorite players in the draft. He's just so dominating, but Sanders got after quarterbacks and really rangy, really athletic. I don't know that his workout numbers do him justice, to be honest. You got to see the film.
Yeah, Sanders is a guy every defensive line coach would fall in love with because he just always plays hard. Like he's always getting after the quarterback. And it's not like he's unrefined as a pass rusher either. Like he has active hands. He has strong hands. He plays with it. He uses his length to his advantage too. So yeah, he's only 228. But when you play with good leverage, you're able to get away with that. So yeah, I think Sanders would be intriguing for sure. And honestly, that defense was one of my favorite defenses to watch. You mentioned Sauce Gardner. They had a few NFL players.
James Cook is interesting too, the Georgia running back, Dalvin Cook's little brother. And man, it's so easy to envision him in this offense. I mean, in some ways, I think that is, if they feel like Mitchell is the number one back, let's say you don't go running back at 61, you go a different position. Maybe you go corner, offensive line, pass rusher, whatever. You don't wind up taking a running back that falls, or maybe one doesn't fall. Man, in that 2nd round pick, or maybe the 3rd round pick, James Cook, the running back from Georgia, what a receiver out of the backfield he is. He's very, very natural. That would really be intriguing to see what James Cook would do in a rotation with Sermon and Mitchell.
So when you said Kenny Walker, and I think he's a better running back than Elijah Mitchell and Trey Sermon, but I also feel like he'd be redundant just because not used to pass protection and not really used to catching the ball out of the backfield. And when I say that, not the swing and screen routes, but actual running routes as a receiver. That's what James Cook does. Like they line him up all over the place, and he wins, and he knows how to catch the ball. He's a really dynamic running back. So if I'm going to draft a running back, he better know how to pass protect, and he better know how to run routes so I can use him out of the backfield. And I think that's exactly what James Cook is. So yeah, man, I'd be all for that.
Yeah. Last one, and this is probably the guy that I see mocked to the Niners the most. And I don't think he's going to be there at 61, but I can see why people, this draft in theory, Kyle, should be about taking care of Trey, right? They drafted Trey. Now it's either protect Trey or help Trey with a weapon. Christian Watson's coming out, and he ran, 4.2s unofficial, I think official low 4.3s. He's a big guy, 6'5", 200 pounds. And if you watch him, man, you can really see that vertical threat. I don't know that it's a great fit because of the dynamic and, how slow it takes receivers to adapt to the NFL, and the fact that every time, Trey throws it to him, I mean, if he is raw, you don't want the perception of, that's your college receiver. I don't know. There's some interesting dynamics there. If everybody's on the same page, it's probably no big deal. But what's your evaluation of Christian Watson? And I think he's probably going in the teens, to be honest, maybe the 20s. But some mocks have him there in the 50s. So he definitely is the kind of receiver. And the North Dakota State thing makes you think, man, that looks like almost a perfect fit. What do you think of him?
Yeah, I agree. So when you're talking about Watson, the long speed shows up at the first play. He runs a route. Like, he's going to run by you. And he's actually very good with those contested catches too. So 6'4", 208, big athletic receiver. So you would think he would be that type of guy. But I wanted to see more of him. I wanted to see maybe a more refined route runner. Maybe a guy who just has more in his arsenal off the line of scrimmage, or is just better in and out of his routes. And because of that, because he wasn't, I would be, I guess I would pass. Sure, if he was there at 61, of course, but he's not going to be. And I imagine he's going to go in the 20s. So I don't think the 49ers would have a shot at Watson.
Hey, man, I've really enjoyed this. We won't take too much more of your time. We're already an hour in. We said we were going to go like 30 to 40 minutes, so we're pushed past. But, man, I love rapping with you, and your stuff, and I'm really looking forward to doing this Niners Nation, collaboration, and it's going to be a lot of fun. We'll get to talk a lot of football, you and I, maybe even get a chance to talk to some of your writers along the way, and I'm just really excited for, the fact that we're collaborating, and I'm going to get a chance to talk to so many of your very informed and dialed in people, including yourself. So really appreciate it and really enjoyed this hour, man. I'm really excited for what we can do, not just between now and the draft, but what we can do just going forward, talking Niner football and bringing Niner fans what they really want, which is just more digital content, more intelligent Niner discussion, not hunting for clicks and
Right.
trying to go for headlines, but actually just really kind of going through the topics of the day. As you know, this team is almost never boring. I mean, there's almost always something to talk about when it comes to the 49er football.
Yeah, they'll give us content, so we won't have to worry about that. But I appreciate you having me on, especially putting our folks on at Niners Nation, man. We're going to work hard this offseason, so can't wait to have them on here and for you to get a chance to talk to all of them.
Awesome, and you're a great follow on Twitter. Tell people on Twitter where they can find you and your comments.
Yeah, find me KP_show. I'm going to try to rev up some draft work here as we get closer, trying to get into more profiles.
Good stuff, Kyle, man. Good talking to you. Have a great night.
Thanks. You too, man. Take care.